ask first, would we be appointing an acting mayor for the balance of the term of the previous mayor at this point?
Yes, you would be.
Okay, I'll move to appoint Alderman Schoenheider as acting mayor for the balance of Mayor Jim Conway's term.
Second.
Roll call.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck. Aye. Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
And Alderman Schoenheider.
Aye, I hope.
You don't have to recuse yourself?
I don't think that's a conflict, though.
It is not a conflict.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the January 22nd, 2013 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council on a very cold night. Could I ask Bertie to call the roll, please?
Acting Mayor Schoenheider.
Here.
Alderman Novit.
Here.
Alderman Waldeck. Here. Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman Pandeleon.
Here.
Alderman Tack. Here. Alderman Palmer absent. Alderman Edelman.
Here.
7 present, 1 absent. Mr. Acting Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Bertie. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda this evening is report of city officers. First item is comments by mayor. We have 3 items on this, but before we do, I just want to take a very brief moment, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to do this at some point much more formally when Jim returns from warm weather in Houston and comes back to Lake Forest. But I think on behalf of all of us, it's appropriate tonight just to thank Jim Conway for his tremendous service to our community. Jim served as a city council, on the city council as an alderman for 6 years and nearly served out his entire balance of his 4-year term as mayor. And those of us who have sat here and those of us who are in the audience that have sat here know what kind of time commitment that was and what kind of a sacrifice that was and how much that really exemplified Jim's commitment to our community. So Jim was a fantastic leader as mayor. He was a great example and a great representative for our community. We'll miss him up here, but we wish him much success. We're sure he'll have it. And we look forward to giving him an official thank you at some point in time in the future. First item on the agenda tonight, Community Spotlight, the School of St. Mary President's Blue Ribbon Award for Education. I'd like to ask Dr. Vanette Biancalana to come up and share some exciting news from the School of St. Mary.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to your council meeting to present some information about the U.S. Department of Education Excellence in Education Blue Ribbon Award. We are very proud to have received this distinguished award this year from the U.S. Department of Education for Excellence in Education. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the School of St. Mary, we are the Church of St. Mary Parish School. The parish was founded in 1875 by Father James McGovern, and the first church was torn down and the present church built in 1910 under Father Barry, the pastor at the time. Father Barry wanted to open a school in 1910, but was advised to wait until the parish could financially support a school. In 1917, Father Barry and the parishioners opened the School of St. Mary under the direction of the Sisters of Mercy. We will be proud to celebrate 100 years of providing a Roman Catholic education to children in 2017. As many of you know, our current pastor is Father Michael McGovern, who just recently celebrated his 9th year as pastor of St. Mary. Our school is comprised of 2 age-appropriate campuses. The Upper Grade Center in East Lake Forest houses grades 4 through 8, and the Primary Grade Center located in West Lake Forest houses our preschoolers through 3rd grade. We have a total of 540 children in our school. There are 3 sections of classes at each grade level with an approximate number of 19 students per classroom. Our pre-K through 5 classes are self-contained and 6 through 8 are departmentalized. And our teachers are Illinois certified and 50% of them have master's degrees. Our junior high teachers have additional certification in the subject areas of which they teach. And for further information, I've placed a school brochure on the table in the back. The Blue Ribbon Award began in 1982 and has been presented to exemplary schools in the United States for 30 years. They just celebrated their 30th anniversary. There are over approximately 138,000 schools in the United States, and in 30 years, about 7,000 schools have been honored with this, the highest award the department confers. This year, 269 schools received this award. Only 50 of the over 300 non-public schools that applied for this award received this award. To apply for the National Blue Ribbon Award, a school must first be eligible. The school must be an exemplary, high-performing school. High-performing means that the achievement of the school's students in the most recent year tested places the school in the top 15% in the nation in reading and in math, as measured by a nationally normed test. Our school met the requested performance criteria for application of this award. So in December of 2011, a group of teachers, administrators, and parents prepared an extensive document which highlighted our school's mission and progress. In order to be considered, all schools must adhere to a rigorous application process which analyzes every aspect of the school. The School of St. Mary provided detailed information documenting our outstanding academic performance, faith formation, fine arts, physical education, world language programs, enrollment data, finances, technology, and student services with an emphasis on our work to meet individual learning needs. Any principal will certainly tell you that the school is as great as its teachers, and we are very fortunate at the School of St. Mary to be blessed with an exceptional Illinois certified teaching staff who enjoy what they do, are lifelong learners themselves, and truly care about each of our children's success in learning. After the judges considered all the subject areas and the programs offered to help children learn, they looked at how we work together with our school parents to help students learn in their faith, academics, and in how they help each other and others outside of the school. Finally, the judges wanted to be sure that we share our ideas with other schools. We wrote about ways we work with other teachers in Catholic schools as well as public schools to share what we know about effectively teaching children. An example of this is our regular articulation meetings with schools our children feed into. These meetings help provide an exchange of information about instructional strategies we use at the elementary level, which provide students the tools for success as they graduate from the School of St. Mary, as well as provide us with information regarding expectations at the high school level. As you can see, the award is a collaborative effort of strong test scores, teaching ability, curriculum, parent involvement, and sharing knowledge. It truly takes a community to be a Blue Ribbon school. Over the next several months, the Department of Education reviewed the applications and announced a total of 269 schools, including School of St. Mary, who would be presented with the National Blue Ribbon Award at the Blue Ribbon Recognition Ceremony on November 13th in Washington, D.C. We are very fortunate to have our school in a community with such high standards for education and are very proud to receive this recognition. The last time we applied for and received this award was in 1989, and our school has changed and grown considerably since then. The requirements for schools receiving multiple blue ribbons are stringent, more stringent than for the first-time applicants, as our documentation must reveal sustained growth and ongoing high academic performance. While in Washington, D.C., Assistant Principal Mrs. Thompson and I met with other principals and school representatives to share what we have learned about educating children with each other, the Department of Education, and the Council for American Private Education. We had the opportunity to hear several officials speak about changes in education. We realize that there is a shift in education at this time. The focus is on preparing children for college and career with an emphasis on developing 21st century skills, which include teamwork, critical and creative thinking. We have worked diligently to provide professional development for our teachers at the School of St. Mary. These opportunities have made a tremendous difference in how we teach and how our students learn. Our school's motto of teaching children to learn, to serve, and to lead supports this shift in education, which promotes teaching values and setting high expectations for students. On behalf of the school, Mrs. Thompson and I were presented with an engraved plaque and program flag with the official seal, which signifies its status and the year of the award. We had a very large celebration of both students and then families in the evening as well, and some of those pictures show those events. The award acknowledges and validates the hard work of students, educators, clergy, families, and communities in striving for and attaining exemplary achievement. National Blue Ribbon schools serve as models for other schools throughout the nation, and school personnel are often sought out as mentors. Blue Ribbon applications are posted on the U.S. Department of Education's website, and media eagerly profile recognized schools, helping the school and community gain additional exposure. As with all other scores and evaluations, the National Blue Ribbon designation is just one of many ways that we measure the success of our school. First and foremost is the happiness, good character, and the success of our individual students. And for that, there is no official award, but we see it in the incredible accomplishments of our graduates who time again and again return to let us know how much their time at School of St. Mary has started them on a path of success in life. So thank you.
Dr. Bianco, thank you very much. It certainly is a great recognition of the work that you and your administrators and your teaching staff and the entire St. Mary community has done. Certainly great recognition for the school and a wonderful recognition for the community. So congratulations again. There's a plaque here that's been presented.
Wait 1 second.
Okay. Okay, come louder.
All right, next item on the agenda, under comments by Mayor, the appointment of Matthew Davis to the Board of Fire and Police Commissioners. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that's approved. Next item, appoint Steve Potzik to the Senior Resource Commission and Nini Lustig as chair of that commission.
And I'd like to move that they both be approved for their appointments. Do we have to do these separately, though, or then as a group?
Okay.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? They are approved. Okay. That wraps up comments by Mayor. Next item on the agenda this evening is comments by City Manager. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor and members of the council. It's my great pleasure to bring this next agenda item to you. The resolution of support for Conway Golf Course to host the 2013 BMW Championship Golf Tournament. As the council knows, we've been quietly in conversations with Conway for some time as they wooed the PGA Tour to try and get the BMW to Conway Golf Course when they made an indication that they wanted to relocate the tournament away from Cog Hill. Conway has been working at bringing a professional championship tournament to their course for some time. As many of you have probably visited the course when they've had some of their other amateur tournaments that have been there, as they sort of worked their way up the ladder to prove to the PGA Tour that they were a top quality championship caliber course. We're very excited about this opportunity that is coming forward in September of this year. We have already engaged both the WGA and the Conway staff in pre-planning for this event, recognizing that it isn't every day that we get 120,000 people from outside of our community to come to a function within our borders. But we think it's a tremendous opportunity for the community, for the businesses in the community, certainly for the course itself, but really mostly I think for the community to be able to showcase itself not just regionally but internationally as well, because this will be televised with the top 70 golfers who will be in Lake Forest for a period of 1 week. It's my pleasure to introduce the manager of Conway Golf Course, Todd Marsh, who's going to come and say a few words, and then we'll hear from Vince Pellegrino from the Western Golf Association. So Todd?
Good evening. It's always enjoyable to talk about golf in a 70-degree day in the fall when it's 0 degrees tonight. But It's my pleasure to be here this evening to speak on behalf of the Conway Farms Golf Club and its membership and its staff. We're truly excited about this opportunity to host the 2013 BMW Championship September 9th through the 15th. The club has set out 5 goals to it's a large event, and we want to try to accomplish 5 strategic goals to make this championship one that we all remember. First, we want to provide the PGA Tour's players, the PGA Tour officials, the Western Golf Association, a best-in-class championship, one that they can be proud that they moved from Cog Hill after 20 years in Lamont, and one to the City of Lake Forest, to Conway Farms Golf Club, and the community. So that's our number 1 goal. The second, to provide the City of Lake Forest, the residents, the homeowners, the opportunity to see your great city, our great city, and to come to Lake Forest for a week, and to make sure that this event is a positive impact to the community, to the commercial side, the restaurants, the hotels, and certainly to every homeowner that lives in the property or within the borders of Conway, or within the borders of the City of Lake Forest. 3, to make sure that BMW is proud. They have a tremendous brand, and they take great pride in their brand worldwide. And we want to make sure that this championship is a caliber of their brand that they represent. And that's important. It's also our 4th goal. It's very important for golf in Chicago to maintain its place in Chicago. There's been some talk about the PGA Tour leaving Chicago. The attendance for the event, attendance in previous events, others outside of the Ryder Cup, has not been terrific. So we're taking great pride in trying to get everybody excited to come to this event, both in the corporate area, certainly in the North Shore, but in the city of Chicago, the western suburbs, and across Milwaukee, Illinois, all over. So we think it's very important for the golf industry and for golf to stay in Chicago. We've had a great presence for over 100 years, great clubs in your own backyard to help start golf, and so we think it's important that the PGA Tour event stays in Chicago at least every other year, or at least on a basis of, periodic. And 5th, it's very important to obviously to the Conway Farms members that they're proud to host a championship, and that they can walk away at the end of the week that it was a special event, and that they can remember a great week in the history of the club. We're a 22-year-old club. We have a long history ahead of us, and we think this is a great step in the right direction to host this championship. So those are the 5 main goals that we'd like to provide, at the end of the day, when we look back at the 2013 BMW Championship. At this time, I'd also like to introduce Vince Pellegrino, the Vice President of Tournament Operations for the Western Golf Association, to go through the details in more about the Evans Scholar Foundation, about the Western Golf Association. We have a video here to show you, and then we can both answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Todd. First off, I want to say we appreciate the opportunity to be here today to present the information about the BMW Championship. We are truly excited about a new chapter in Western Golf Association history to bring the championship to Lake Forest and to Conway Farms. There is some information that everyone has in front of you. I'd like to walk you through that, but I think to start things off, we've got a video presentation that really talks about the history of the Western Golf Association, the BMW Championship, and the charity that the event supports, the Evans Scholars Foundation. So I thought I'd show a video first and then take everyone through the information that we have on the packets in front of you.
See it in his eyes. A lot of emotion. Unharnessed enthusiasm by the fans in Chicago. Oh my goodness! Yes! What a gutsy performance there. First held as the Western Open in 1899 and conducted ever since by the Western Golf Association, the BMW Championship enjoys a rich history exceeded in years only by the British and U.S. Opens. And its legendary list of champions is as illustrious as any in the game of golf. From Hagen and Sarazen, to Hogan, Nelson and Snead, to Palmer and Nicklaus, to Watson, Crenshaw, and woods. One of the most prestigious events on the PGA Tour, the BMW Championship, is equally revered for its charitable commitment to the community, as 100% of the tournament's proceeds go directly to the Evans Scholars Foundation, which oversees one of the nation's largest privately funded scholarship programs, providing a college education for more than 9,000 deserving young men and women since its inception in 1930.
On a perfect day, the BMW Championship is underway as the race for the FedEx Cup continues. Sergio Garcia, 203 yards. That is the way to add some drama. Garcia with the ace at the third.
As the penultimate event in the PGA Tour playoffs for the FedEx Cup, the BMW Championship boasts one of the finest fields in golf, as the best of the best of the PGA Tour showcase their talents on one of the game's greatest stages.
Just like that, that went in with authority.
Well, he's picked a good time for that putter to come alive, I'll tell you that.
Got a chance. That'll get most of them off their feet.
This would be an all-universe version.
It looks all universe, Mr. Universe. Signs good here.
Oh, I guess. Dustin Johnson hits it stiff at the 17th.
A new chapter in BMW Championship lore will be written in 2013 as the top 70 players in the FedEx Cup standings take their talents to Conway Farms Golf Club, a major-worthy masterpiece fashioned by golf course architect Tom Fazio, a world-class venue for a world-class event. Don't miss your chance to be a part of it.
Okay, so that was little bits of information about, obviously the tournament. A lot of golf swings just look like your swings, I'm sure, and mine. We'll see plenty of that at Conway Farms this September. But thought we'd run through a little bit about the championship, about the FedEx Cup playoffs, a few things about what we have planned for the golf course, how it's going to affect the community, the players who are going to be here, and a little bit about our organization, the Western Golf Association, Evans Scholars Foundation. But first, just a few facts about the championship. The dates, as Todd mentioned, September 9th through the 15th of this year at Conway Farms Golf Club. We have a purse of $8 million, and it's part of the FedEx Cup playoffs. And basically what the playoffs are, it started in 2007. The PGA Tour's goal was to bring the best players in the world together at the end of the season to compete for the FedEx Cup and a prize of $10 million to the first place winner. We are the third event in a series of 4 championships. The first one starts in New York at the Barclays Championship with 125 players. That gets cut down to the top 100. That's going to go to the Deutsche Bank Championship in Boston. This year, there's a week in between Boston and Chicago. So we'll come to Lake Forest with the top 70 players, and then it'll be cut to the top 30 that'll go to the Tour Championship in Atlanta. We expect over 125,000 people to attend the championship and have the need for about 1,500 volunteers, of which we're a little bit more than halfway home with just the support we've had from previous championships, whether that's in Indianapolis, St. Louis, or from Cog Hill. And certainly there'll be a great economic impact to the Chicagoland area. We've estimated about $30 million from previous championships and kind of what other tour events have experienced in other similar markets. And then certainly, as Bob mentioned, the TV coverage on Golf Channel and NBC, but there's also an international coverage of the championship. And we'll put the spotlight on Lake Forest for the week of September 9th. So we are excited about it. I talked a little bit about the Western Golf Association and the video, and the BMW Championship, which was called the Western Open, started in 1899 and is the second oldest championship in the country, and actually it's the oldest PGA Tour event on the schedule. We talked a little bit about the FedEx Cup playoffs, but the top 70 players will be here, and we are one of the PGA Tour 4 playoff events and one of the founding events on the PGA Tour. Like I said, it's the oldest PGA Tour event in the nation, and we're very proud of that at the Western Golf Association. But for schedule events, what to expect that week, September 9th is when the tournament proper actually starts on that Monday, and we plan to have a pro-am on the golf course in the afternoon. It's typically practice rounds in the morning, followed by a pro-am in the afternoon with additional practice rounds on Tuesday. We feel we'll get a lot of players that will come out Monday and Tuesday because of them seeing the golf course for the first time. Wednesday is the Gardner Heydrich Pro-Am, and it's the largest fundraiser that we have all year for the Evan Scholars Foundation, which, again, all proceeds from the championship benefit the Evan Scholars Foundation, which I'll talk a little bit about in a couple minutes. But this is our largest fundraiser for the championship, which will take place all day on Wednesday. And then Thursday through Sunday, we'll have 70 players with no cut. First and second rounds on Thursday, Friday, followed up by third and fourth round on NBC on Saturday and Sunday. And typically Thursday and Friday, the championship will start around 10 o'clock, pending weather, and end about 5 o'clock each day, Thursday through Sunday. Saturday and Sunday will start a little bit earlier and go off 1 tee on Saturday and Sunday. This is really hard to see up on the screen here, but this is kind of an overview of the golf course. There's a printed out version in the package that talks a little bit about some of the hospitality venues that we have on the golf course and where we plan to put a few things like the media center and NBC compound. But certainly, feel free to take a look at what we're proposing for the championship and on-site at Conway Farms. Next slide talks a little bit about the traffic plan. As Bob mentioned, we've been speaking with the city for a long time now, actually since the middle of last year, and keeping them abreast of what our proposal plans are, getting a lot of input, and certainly this is an evolving plan. We're going to take into consideration all the concerns or potential concerns that any resident of Lake Forest or the neighboring towns may have. But the idea for right now is to, if you look on the map, is to park the general spectators at Riverwoods and Everett Roads, which is a piece of farmland owned by Granger right now, which we anticipate we can hold a majority of the spectators that are going to attend the tournament in that one lot alone, which will also contain the hospitality patrons parking as well. But it also walks through the proposed traffic pattern for our spectator traffic flow, and then also bus traffic, which we can discuss as well. The next slide we have here talks about the players, and the video showed a little bit of the players, but as I mentioned, it'll be the top 70 players in the world. Rory McIlroy, Luke Donald, who is a member of Conway Farms, been a strong supporter of the championship, but the top 70 players in the world will be attending, as according to the FedEx Cup point system that's in place throughout the entire season. This slide talks a little bit about Conway Farms and the award-winning golf course that is not too far from here. And they hosted many tournaments, as you may know. Actually, one of our events, the Western Amateur in 2009, which is a tremendous success for the Western Golf Association. But we look forward to adding another championship to their growing list of events that they've hosted. The next slide is a list of the staff at the Western Golf Association, the people who will be responsible for conducting the championship. The Western Golf Association is a non-for-profit organization, and we've got several staff members, key staff members up there that'll be coordinating the championship from anything from operations to sales to the public, the PR and communications as well. As I mentioned, we were founded in 1899. We not only run the BMW Championship, which was the Western Open, but we also conduct the Western Junior Championship, which is the oldest junior championship in the nation, the Western Amateur, which is the second, arguably the second best championship in the world. And we added a new tournament to our portfolio this year as well in Fort Wayne, a web.com playoff event, the Hotel Fitness Championship. So golf is our middle name, literally, and we host many championships, and we're especially proud of the BMW Championship. And if you take a look at the names that the winners on the trophies, it's a pretty impressive list, a who's who of amateur and professional golf that we're pretty proud of. But the most important part of what we do on a daily basis is support the Evan Skowers Foundation. This is the sole charity of the BMW Championship and all championships that we run. I'm actually an Evan Skower alum myself, went to Indiana University, caddied at Riverside Golf Club. So the Evan Skowers are near and dear to my heart. We also have a familiar face here with us today, Mr. Roger Moore, who is our first Marquette Evan Skower. I don't know if it's okay to say your class. Class of 53, Lake Forest resident, past chairman of the Western Golf Association, but also a chairman of the Board of Trustees for the Evan Skowers Foundation now.
And Vince, if I can interrupt you,
yes,
a
sir.
former third ward alderman. So,
so very familiar to the council. But the Evan Skowers Foundation has been administered by the Western Golf Association since 1930. When we sent two caddies to Northwestern University. There's over 9,600 total Evan Skower alumni right now, and each year we grant over 230 new scholarships, full tuition-based scholarships to deserving caddies. You can imagine what that tuition bill is each year, and I'm not sure it's going down anytime soon, but we're pretty proud of all the money that we raised via the BMW Championship to benefit the Evan Skowers Foundation. This is a little bit more about a glance of the Western Golf Association, and at a glance, you know, we have 422 golf and country clubs that are supporters of the Western Golf Association. We've held 313 championships since our founding in 1899. Like I mentioned, we give out 240 new scholarships each year. I think this is really impressive here is the Evan Skowers have a cumulative GPA of 3.25. That's gone up since I've graduated, which is nice. So I'm not bringing it down any longer. And then a graduation rate of 92%, which I think any university across the country would be very proud of. So we're proud of the kids we have in school and the rate that they're graduating as well. And I think that concludes my presentation regarding the BMW Championship and the charity that we're so proud of that the tournament supports. So certainly we appreciate your support and assistance in making it a successful championship for the city of Lake Forest, but also for the Scholarship Foundation.
Any questions of Vince or Todd?
No questions, but I'd like to move at this point for approval of the proposed resolution proclaiming the city's support for Conway Farm Golf Course hosting the 2013 BMW Championship Golf Tournament. And I'm excited for it. I think we're all proud of our town. We want this tournament to be a success, and we'll do everything we can to make it that. Is there a second?
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, unanimously approved. Vince, welcome on behalf of all of us here at the City of Lake Forest. Welcome to Conway Farms. Welcome to Lake Forest. We're delighted that you've chosen our community and chosen Conway Farms Golf Club to host the championship, and we'll look forward to a great week in September.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think before we move on, I'd be remiss to ask either Roger Moore or John Luby, who's also in the audience, if you wanted to make any comments on behalf of the Western Golf Association or the Conway members.
I'll just say...
Wait, you have to come to the, you remember the
Mr.
drill,
Luby,
John.
please come to the podium.
feel right at home.
Yeah. And please keep it short.
It'll be very short. I recently was at the interviews for the final group for the Western, for the scholarships, and Roger was there also. And I've never seen a more impressive group of young people who've worked hard over the summer carrying golf bags that really want to go to college and are really wonderful rewards for them. So it's really a wonderful, wonderful charity, and these kids really appreciate it and come out and support it later on in life when they can. Right, Roger?
Let me add a footnote to what John said. This scholarship is the largest privately funded scholarship in the country that provides full tuition and housing for students. The tuition bill in a given year is over $10 million. And the proceeds from the tournament go toward paying that tuition. But there are a lot of other fundraising activities that make it possible. And I know that Conway is very proud to be hosting it. And I'm very pleased to have gone through the program as an Evans Scholar. Also, having spent 12 years sitting in this chamber, 6 as a member of the Plan Commission and 6 on the City Council. In fact, George Pandalean goes back to my days on the Plan Commission. I know how hard all of you work, and we appreciate what you do and the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, John, very much. And we look forward to many months and hopefully, Todd, nice weather the whole week, right? I should add to the council, when we were working closely with the staff, a group of us went down to Carmel, Indiana, where the BMW was last year. And as I drove in, everybody else was driving out because they were evacuating the course. So it was a good experience for us, but one we hope we don't have here in Lake Forest in 2013. So welcome. With the council's indulgence, let me jump to item C, which is the consideration of resolution of intent for the multi-jurisdictional task force on fire and EMS services. If you don't mind, this is a resolution that basically says that the city of Lake Forest joins 3 other communities, Highland Park, Highwood, and Lake Bluff, in putting together a multi-jurisdictional task force that will continue the dialogue and the discussion that took place back on December 12th when the International City County Management Association made a presentation of a study and its findings on what the benefits might be to the communities by joining together our fire and EMS services. As it was pointed out that evening, to a large extent, the communities are already sharing services in many respects. And so this is not a new concept of fire service in our area or in the state of Illinois. But really the question is, can we go further, and can we look at ways to continue to enhance the delivery of service to our residents while at the same time being as cost-effective and efficient as we possibly can. So the resolution that's before you this evening, which I believe we're the first of the 4 communities that have it on its agenda, would be that we want to participate and ask the mayor to appoint 2 people to this multi-jurisdictional task force.
Bob, you and I have spoken. I think we've agreed that you're going to serve on behalf of the city, and I've asked Alderman Palmer to also be a part of that, and he's agreed to do that. So.
That's what it gets for not being here.
When you don't show up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, then, let's quickly move for approval of that resolution. And so moved.
Second. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Need a roll call vote, Bertie, please.
Alderman Novit.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck. Alderman Pandalean.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman
Aye.
Tack. Alderman Edelman. Acting Mayor Schoenheider.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bert.
Now, if you'll bear with me for 1 second while the overhead warms up. The next item on your agenda is the formal approval of the strategic plan. As certainly the members of the City Council know, along with, I think, 50 other community representatives. Over the course of 2012, we came together on multiple occasions to prepare a new strategic plan for the city of Lake Forest. This plan has been posted on the city's website. We encourage residents to review it, offer us any comments, and in your packet, starting on page 23, is the formal narrative of our strategic plan. It's also published on our website right now for people to look at it. So the first step would be to, the IT guy's coming to work something out. The first step would be to formally adopt the strategic plan effective January of 2013 so that we can then begin implementing it, and then I'll go from there. Or I'll be happy to answer any questions that
Are
anybody
we
might have.
waiting for a display or?
No, you don't need that displayed to do the first part, because that's in your packet, and you have that, and then I'm going to move on. So if there could be a motion in a second, we'll adopt the strategic plan.
I'd move that we adopt the strategic plan as currently presented.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously.
I'll try and make this somewhat readable if possible. One of the things that we talked about during the course of the strategic plan and at a previous city council meeting is the last thing I think anybody wants to do is, considering all the hard work and effort by those who participate in the strategic plan, to have it just sit on a shelf and collect dust. So at the direction of the city council, the city staff took the strategic plan, took the strategic objectives, whoops.
Took a jar of white out.
That's right, to avoid it. This one right here. Oh, there it goes. Okay. To take the strategic issues and objectives that are in there and then establish action steps associated with each one of those. Now, I will say that we went through and we've probably been able to identify some action steps to about 85 to 90% of them. Some of them we'll want to bring back to the council for further discussion and clarification in the future. But the challenge I think that the staff had, and I believe you all have a copy in front of you, is the fact that there is a lot of work on this. And we want to recognize that we're not going to be able to undertake all of these action steps in the course of 1 year. And so what we tried to do is categorize them in really 3 different compartments. Those that have a green dot on them mean that they're generally are ongoing. They're things that we either have been doing or continue to do and will continue to do in the coming months and coming years. The red dots are those that we've identified that we would like to tackle in 2013. And you'll notice that the next column to the right is who the responsible party is, and then what the estimated time frame is that we will take a look at that. And the idea is to identify what those action steps are that we think we can tackle in 2013, and that might be, the city council, the finance committee, the plan commission, city staff. It might be open lands, or working with open lands and some other groups and so forth. And then finally, the third dot is the blue dot, which we recognize is still a critical need, but one that we think we will tackle in years 2, 3 to 5. We give this to you, and I think you've seen an earlier rough draft of this. If there is anything on here that you feel as though maybe it's a blue dot, you want to see it as a red dot, or a red dot, want to go into a blue dot, whatever the case might be, that's fine. And we look at this as a very dynamic, fluid document. We will be posting this on the city's website, so residents will be able to go to it, will be able to see what kind of progress that we're making. But we also wanted to be realistic in what we thought we could tackle in the course of a year. So we present this to you this evening for 2 reasons. One, for your edification, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about one important strategic issue as it relates to one of the goals that had been identified by the group in the development of the strategic plan. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have with respect to this if you have some. I know you've seen this in the past, and we just wanted to make sure that you understood sort of what we saw as the priorities based on what we heard from the participants at the strategic planning session and our knowledge of some other things that are going on within the community. But believe me, staff is looking for any feedback that you might have about changes or reprioritization if you think that that's necessary. Okay. Well, now comes the homework assignment. One of the things that was identified by the group in the strategic planning process was the fact that we need to find new creative ways to engage our community. And this is not unusual just to Lake Forest. We see this in cities across the country. And I read somewhere that someone has coined the phrase, what do they call it, rational ignorance. In that people sort of knowingly say, I'm so busy, I'm not going to focus on this issue unless, quite frankly, it's right next door to me, or it's just down the street of me and I think it's going to have an immediate impact on me. Then I'll get energized and then I'll get involved. But unfortunately, and I know this is one of my pet peeves, and I think a number of staff, is that we seem as a society to have fallen into sound bites. Everything's solved by sound bite. But in reality, we're dealing with complex issues, and complex issues cannot be solved by sound bites. And what we are trying to do through this process that we're calling Our Community, Our Place, an engagement strategy, is to establish monthly meetings in the city of Lake Forest that would be hosted and chaired by one member of the city council. And you'll see in a moment, you get to pick and choose what your topic is from the strategic plan. But we will bring together residents who have an interest, who have read about it, might be interested in it, to just come and talk about the subject before it's before the Plan Commission or the Zoning Board or any board or commission. How many times have we heard, oh, it's already a done deal, the city's already decided what direction it wants to go. But really to try and engage residents to not make decisions. And I think that's the most important aspect of this, is that we're not there to make decisions. What we're really there to do is learn and to understand. And to understand that these complex issues have perspectives, if you will. And to help people come there, not that I'm going to convince you what my position is, but to understand what other people's positions are. And while I may be in favor of something, I have to accept the fact that there are others who may be opposed to it. And I'm there to learn why they may be opposed to it. And learn why, if I'm in favor of it, they're opposed to it. Is there a common ground that we can reach that we say, hey, this is worth pursuing? Or we may decide, you know what, after bringing people together, we've decided it's best put this thing on the shelf and it's not worth pursuing, which I have to say selfishly from a staff standpoint, we would appreciate, because we don't want to spend a lot of time and energy researching something if there's really not an interest in the community to do so. We are very fortunate that Alderman Moore has agreed to be our guinea pig. You'll see here that we've identified a calendar for 2013, and Alderman Moore has agreed to take on the subject of Granny Flats, which came out of the strategic plan about the discussion about the housing mix that's in the community. And as we know, there's an awful lot of coach houses and garage apartments and those kinds of things that are in the community. And there's a lot of misinformation about what's permitted or not permitted in the city. But I think the feeling is, let's get some people together and find out if this makes sense for us from both a historic preservation standpoint, but also from an affordable housing standpoint in looking at this within the community. And it was interesting, we had a meeting recently, and Alderman Moore can, I think, attest to this, is even though we were there just to talk about how we would set this meeting up, we quickly got into, well, how does this apply to this? And how might this apply to this? And we immediately got into, I think, problem solving, when really we weren't there to solve the problem. But we understood that even a simple issue like Granny Flats is so complex and has many different facets inside to it. So what I'm going to be asking all of you to do is to take the strategic plan matrix, look through it, see if there's a topic there that interests you, that you have a certain interest in in sponsoring, if you will, one of these monthly meetings, because we really want to make sure that the council stays engaged, and quite frankly, I think the residents want to see you stay engaged and take on these issues. They hear enough from the staff. They want to make sure the council is on top of these issues. And the only requirement is an hour and a half, one evening a year, in the course of the year, but that you would then be responsible for coming back and reporting to the council and the community what basically transpired in terms of the conversation. And credit goes to Alderman Moore, because he came up with the idea we're going to do something very simple, and I'll let him explain it, it's more of a T-chart where we'll be able to identify what sort of the positives, negatives, and the outcomes are of that meeting, and whether or not we're going to go any further, send it to a board or commission, or just put it back on the shelf and not address it. So those are the kinds of things we'd ask for you to think about. Here is sort of a draft agenda for any of these meetings. In this case, if we do in February, Granny Flats, after we have just introductions of who's there, and we might have anywhere from 25 to 75 people, depending on the topic matter. So everybody introduces themselves who's in attendance there. And then we might, whether it's staff or somebody else, maybe open lands, whatever the topic might be, give sort of a background of what the issue is. So at least everybody's working with some base knowledge, and importantly, I will say fact-based, not emotion-based, but fact-based. What are the facts that are out there? And then address both sides of the issues. What are the positives? What are the negatives? Spend some time on what did we learn? Hopefully one of the outcomes of this is people leave that meeting with more knowledge on all aspects of the issue and not just their own aspect of the issue or their own preference of the issue. And then finally, what are the next steps and where we go from here? So that's sort of the concept that we're looking at. It might be great, it might fall flat on its face, we don't know, but we figure it's worth the effort, because I think everybody collectively in the strategic planning exercise said we need to engage the full community in some of these conversations and not wait before they come before the city council, but get out ahead of them and really engage people in that conversation so that they feel they have a certain investment, but more importantly, they don't feel that the decision's already been made and it's just being railroaded through. So with that, let me pause, answer any questions that you might have with respect to this subject, and maybe I'll ask Alderman Moore, since he got roped into the first topic. If you have any questions.
I'll just say that the format for what we would bring back to City Council would just be a simple format that we'd agree to, but it'd be the same for all the meetings so that we could relate the topics. So it's just a pros, cons, and comments, kind of 3-section form, and it can be changed, but I thought that way we're all bringing back the same form, and it would be, it wasn't complex, and I think it was your idea, but you're very gracious to, I told you if it worked, it'd be mine. I think that's what you remember. So.
That's how it usually works.
I would like to point out that the Granny Flats meeting is, it's a name that's stuck, but it's kind of misleading. Just to clarify that, because we're here and we're mentioning it again and people don't know what it means potentially. It's the possibility of, through code amendment, legitimizing occupancy of secondary buildings on single-family dwellings. Gatehouses, areas over garages that would exceed our current code, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And because we're televised and because it's coming up so quickly, I'd like to say that, but please stop me if I'm wrong, you're allowed to have 3 non-family members living in your house as a...
I'm going to look at Kathy.
Right? But you can't have 4.
That's right.
And you're allowed to rent a house, but no more than 3 unrelated people can live in the house if you have a rental house. But most over-the-garage second apartments and some gatehouses, and I think we have our pool houses, things like this. I think we've identified, there's quite a few garages, but I think we've identified over 100 second units that could, by size, maybe not by preference of the owner, be used for these things. They currently aren't possible by code. Some might be sneaked in, but we'd like to make that a legitimate thing as part of a housing mix. It's not specifically designed for grannies which is the one thing I wanted to say today. It could be college professors, it could be students, it could be friends, whatever, it could be anybody, quite frankly. And the meeting's February 20th at, what, 7 o'clock, we said?
Yeah, we're going to go from 7 to 8:30. The first at Gorton, and we are going to try and have every one of these meetings at Gorton. The first one that we were able to schedule with everybody's schedule there, February 20th, they had a conflict in the community room, but we're still going to be at Gorton. And then after that, we moved to the third Thursday, I think. Isn't that what we decided? The third Thursday, we'll try and schedule it because we can put it in the Gorton community room there. And we want people to know that they can go there every time. Even if they don't have any interest in the subject, they may just come to learn and be educated about what the subject matter might be.
And we identified the stakeholders for this meeting, being the property owners without buildings, Preservation Society because of the impact on historic preservation,
real estate community, neighbors.
Right. Homes could have income streams attached to them, providing, neighbors of people with these buildings. These all would be the interested parties. So hopefully it works smoothly and everybody's in agreement.
Right.
Bob, I know we've had discussions about this. I mean, the last year we've had terrific turnouts at town hall meeting, at the ward meetings, and the interaction we've had from the residents has been extraordinary, really has been. And I think we as a council have appreciated that feedback we've gotten. So I think it's a great idea. I know you brought it up to us before the holidays, and I think the holidays allowed us to go on vacation.
Right.
So I would encourage every one of us to take a look at the list, pick something that hits home with you, and get back to Bob here in the next week or so.
And I think it's great. We need to engage the community that much more. David's kind of at a disadvantage because obviously as word gets out of the regularity of the meetings, hopefully the attendance or interest will pick up once the path is burnt. But yeah, again, it's important that there is enough publicity so people know it exists.
Right.
So I'm sure you've thought through that.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that we will try and nail you down earlier if possible, because we will certainly work with the press, we'll put it on our websites, we'll work with the local blogs and try and get the word out there as much as we can, because we hope the same thing, Alderman Novit, that as the word gets out there, people might just say, hey, it's the third Thursday, I'm going to go to Gorton and see what they're talking about tonight. So. The last item I have under my agenda is, as the council knows, at the first meeting of the year, I always come back with sort of the community goals and the community priorities. And these are, even though the staff's working on hundreds of different projects through the course of the year, we wanted to make sure that we were focused on what we thought were the main priorities of the city council and the community going forward. And certainly with respect to 2013, as we just talked about, the implementation of the strategic plan. We do take it very seriously, and we want to work very closely with the city council, the community boards and commissions to make sure that we're making progress on our plan and that plan isn't just collecting dust on the shelf. With respect to advocate, educate, and celebrate, one of the things that we heard from the strategic planning session is we know who we are. We know that we're a residential community. We know that we have strong family values and traditions and a strong history of philanthropy and so forth in our community. And so we don't need to spend a lot of time trying to guess who we are, try to go out and find out who we are. But I think what we need to do is to spend more time really reinforcing who we are, the values of our communities, doing more of the education, just what we talked about in terms of those community engagement items. And also in 2013, hopefully celebrate. We think that the BMW tournament certainly is an opportunity to celebrate. I think sometimes we don't take the time to really appreciate all the different festivals and activities that are going on in Lake Forest, and it is a great place. That's what I always tell people. Why would anybody want to be anywhere else in the summer but in Lake Forest? Because there is so much going on and so many wonderful opportunities. So in 13, we want to make sure that we get the word out, and hopefully through our new website we'll be able to really promote all those things that are going on within the community. Certainly redeveloping the Laurel Avenue site is going to be a high priority for the City Council. That's going to be coming back before you, working its way through the PPL committee. But it's something that, while we don't think it's going to get redeveloped in 2013, because the market certainly I don't think is going to be there, we need to do all the heavy lifting in terms of the work. The master plan that was done, I think, is close to 7 years old now, 6 or 7 years old, and I think we need to revisit those design standards. And so that will certainly be an item that will be before the for the city, as well as continuation of the rail service safety enhancement improvements, both the east side station and the west side station, and our efforts to complete the engineering plans for the pedestrian tunnel and to secure the additional funding so that we can move forward with both the implementation of the pedestrian tunnel and hopefully the stop of the Amtrak service during the course of 13 or 14. And so those will continue to be high priorities, and unfortunately they just take a long time when you're working with so many agencies and the federal government as well. We heard an awful lot this evening about the BMW Championship. Staff has been working. As a matter of fact, today staff had its first tabletop exercise on what happens if 30,000 of our favorite friends are here and a storm blows through. What do we do? And we'll be doing more of that kind of planning and preparation work so that we make sure that we have everything covered when that occurs. The issue of business alignment, I think you've heard from Susan Kelsey in the past. We've had a number of new businesses move into town. It's funny, I think there's some discussion right now about do we have too many restaurants, or how many restaurants is the right number, and so forth. And I think we would all agree that we really shouldn't be in the business of regulating what the market does, but I think more importantly we need to spend some time surveying our residents, and not just on what they may think they want, but seriously what we as a community can support. I'm sure all of you have been like me, that everybody says, oh, let's have a movie theater, or a hardware store, or this or that. And reality is that we as a community can't support that. The economics just aren't there. And so I think we have to, particularly in light of what's happening with online businesses now and the whole issue of the big box and the brick and mortar stores and whatnot, that we have to really look at what we have in our business community and identify what's important. There was some discussion in the course of the strategic planning session about should our business district actually shrink? Should it come down to better fit with the needs of our community? Susan Kelsey has been surveying the businesses, and just generally about 75% of their activity is from Lake Forest, Lake Bluff residents. Only 25% of it is from customers coming in from outside our community. So it's not like it's a mall kind of a situation where they're drawing large numbers of people from outside the community. So understanding who we are and the services that we can support, then really understanding what are the businesses that we're lacking or missing, and how can we go after them and get them within our community. Hospital expansion is obviously a very important project that's going to be taking place in 2013. I think the first meeting of the advisory committee is later this month, and as soon as the hospital has some preliminary plans that they want the advisory committee to look at, we'll be working on that. Outside of that, I know Kathy has been meeting with both the Army Corps of Engineers and the hospital and IDOT, and efforts are moving forward as quickly as we can with trying to get the right in, right out on Route 41. Diversity of housing will continue to be an issue that we will look at, and certainly the discussion that we had here earlier about the Granny Flats fits into that. And then finally, while I think everybody will admit that Lake Forest is a beautiful community, we always feel like we can be better. And there's always little things here and there that we're working on. And in 2013, certainly the Forest Park project will be underway, and that will have a beautiful, magnificent impact on the whole entrance to the lakefront. But we've had the discussions too about what to do with Route 60, and we'll be bringing that back to the City Council. And the train station, we're hoping that once the weather breaks, we'll be able to get back on that and finish the painting and the exterior improvements to the train station. And there's a few other projects around town that were identified that we'll be looking at too. Certainly the Route 41 Deer Path corridor right there, and those old stairways that are there came up during the strategic planning session to take a look at. So there's about 4 or 5 other projects that we want to look at that we think we can even help the community look even better. And somebody said this earlier when we were talking about the TIF district. You go back and you look at some of those pictures and you say, well, Lake Forest has always been a pretty place. Well, not really. And we think we've improved greatly, but we want to make sure that we continue to put our best foot forward and quite honestly, get things spruced up so in September of this year when we're on national TV, we want to make sure that Lake Forest looks as good as it possibly can. So those are the priorities. I'll be happy to answer any questions, or if you're tired of listening to me talk, I'll be happy to sit down as well.
Any questions for Bob?
Then that completes my report. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Next item on the agenda, comments by council members. First item under that category, the Finance Committee, Alderman Pandellian.
Thank you. Let me get to the right spot here. Okay. Earlier this evening, we talked briefly and had a little presentation from Elizabeth Holub about the termination of the West Lake Forest Tax Increment Financing District, or TIF district, which Bob just alluded to. Anybody who was here 23 years ago when that process started and remembers what that the area generally around the intersection of Everett and Waukegan used to look like, it's unrecognizable today. It's quite attractive. It was very much not like that back then, and this TIF effort has been a rousing success and ended up with a surplus. But at this point, we have first reading of an ordinance terminating the West Lake Forest Tax Increment Finance District, declaring surplus revenue in the TIF district, and authorizing payment of surplus revenue to the affected areas or taxing districts who participated on a pro rata basis, and also an ordinance providing for a supplemental appropriation for fiscal year 2013 for the TIF fund. And this, again, this is a first reading. I don't know if there are any questions held over from the Finance Committee meeting that anybody would like to ask, or if there are comments, but.
This can be George, this can be a waiving first reading and a final approval, if the council so chooses.
I think the
Staff
recommendation
is recommending that we just
of
take it
staff
one
was to
time,
do a
one
first
step
reading.
at a time.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and just informational sake, there is an excess in the TIF, and at this point it's being distributed. Over $400,000 is coming back to the city of Lake Forest as excess funds from the distribution of what's left in the TIF. It's been very successful, and for all that created it, it has only enhanced and improved the city during that span of time.
Just a quick factoid, and Elizabeth, we may need your help on this, but the total assessed valuation of the properties located in the TIF district in 1989 or 88 when the TIF district was established was $2.4
million.
$2.4 million. Today, after the close of the TIF, the total assessed valuation of the properties located within the TIF district is
As of September of 2012, it was estimated at $49.5 million.
okay. So that's a 25 times increase in the value of the property within the TIF district. If you read bad things about TIFs, yes, people have abused TIFs. That didn't happen here. This is an extremely successful effort taken over 23 years through multiple mayors, multiple city councils, multiple iterations of city staff, a fair amount of turnover among the population, the development of hundreds of homes on the west side of town that are now lived in by people that in many cases never saw what the area looked like before. But it's just a huge testament to quality of vision, of development, and of financial leadership by our predecessors, and a continuity of commitment to that over a long period of time. So it's a something we really should celebrate. And we have experience now doing it right. So to the extent that opportunities arise where this technique can be used elsewhere in the community, we have a track record of using it and doing it right. And nobody should be afraid of that.
And I feel guilty, but under statute, we do have to terminate the TIF, so we have no choice. It's been successful, but its time has kind of come to an end. So I guess I would like to, at this point, move to waive first reading, grant final approval of the
They're
ordinance.
suggesting that we only grant first reading.
Just first reading.
Okay, just first reading. Then of the ordinance terminating the Westlake Forest TIF district and declaring a surplus and authorizing payment of any surplus to the affected taxing districts on a prorated basis.
A second?
Can you second?
Did you second?
I said, do we have a second?
Second.
Yes, he can, though.
I can tonight, at least. So.
Okay.
You're in dual
But no,
capacity.
go ahead. I need
I did.
second.
Yes.
Bertie, do we have roll call or voice only?
Voice.
Voice only. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, under the Property and Public Lands Committee, is consideration of an ordinance vacating the right-of-way located between the properties.
Wait a second. There's a second part to it, and I think we have to,
Do we have three different components?
yeah, we have to waive at least first reading for the ordinance making a supplemental appropriation for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2012 and ending April 30th, 2013.
I don't think we're waiving, I think we are.
Well, the
Or
recommended
voting on
action
first
shows
reading.
both waiving and granting on both components.
Right, and there was a last minute change of direction on that.
Okay, so
Nobody told me, so.
I stand corrected
They told me,
and
I should have said something.
I move as stated.
Alderman Novak, would you restate that, please?
Okay, I'll try this again. So we're waiving first reading and granting final approval? No.
No, we're granting first reading.
Okay, so we're
That, whatever
just
that-
granting
whatever you do
first
to first
reading,
readings.
and this would be of the, and asking for approval of the ordinance?
No, just
No.
grant.
No approval, just first
Move to
reading
grant first.
of
first
the
reading.
ordinance, making the supplemental appropriation for the fiscal year 2000, or beginning May 1st, 2012 and ending April 30th, 2013.
Thank you. Second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Alderman Waldeck. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. We're good. Now we can go on. Next item on the agenda, property and public lands.
Sorry, I didn't do that very well.
Consideration of an ordinance vacating the right-of-way located between the properties on Stonegate Road, actually, and Property and Public Lands Committee, coupled with discussions with both the residents, as well as Karina, as well as Vic, and several of the council members have had ongoing discussions about this particular issue. And I'd like Karina to come up and just give everyone a bit of a background on this and where we stand.
Good evening, Acting Mayor and members of the City Council. This evening, staff is asking the Council's consideration of an ordinance vacating the right-of-way located between the properties addressed as 14115 Stonegate Road and the properties addressed as 11 and 33 Stonegate Road. Just to familiarize you, on the overhead is a copy of the proposed plat of survey. And the right-of-way extends from Illinois Avenue all the way east to Lake Michigan. The right-of-way is essentially 10 foot wide by 1,600 foot long. At the end of the right-of-way, there's a pedestrian easement there. Additionally, if you'll see on this map, there is a dotted line here which indicates where the edge of the bluff is. So you'll notice that this entire section essentially is no longer there because of the deterioration.
So this consideration is not unlike any other prior vacation recommendation that have actually been brought forward to you before. The Planning and Preservation has brought forth recommendations to prior councils. For your convenience, in your packet, there is a list of vacated parcels that we created since 1982. And you'll notice since 2006 that when the city vacated those properties, there were some limitations that we'll talk about further in this presentation. So just a little bit of background. In 2006, the city received a request to actually vacate the right-of-way. At that time, staff actually contacted the homeowners, polled the homeowners to identify what their interest level was at that time. Staff did further due diligence, and at that time there was going to be a recommendation to the city council to actually vacate the properties, vacate the right-of-way 5 foot to the north and 5 foot to the south. However, that actually failed to proceed because the homeowner of 1 Stonegate Road sold the home. Since then, staff has periodically received requests, and in order to do our due diligence, staff brought this item in front of the Property and Public Land Committee to identify whether or not this property is a strategic property that the city should continue to have moving forward. The Property and Public Land Committee did suggest at the March 19th that it would be vacated. However, at that meeting, there were a number of questions that still had come forth from the homeowners, so what we decided to do was hold a neighborhood meeting. In May, we held the neighborhood meeting, and 3 of the 5 homeowners that were there, in addition to the First Ward aldermen, were there. During that meeting, as it was facilitated by Victor Filippini, our city attorney, he basically explained that as part of the original Lake Forest subdivision, Illinois Avenue was platted, as I mentioned earlier, to extend to the easternmost part of Lake Forest to the Lake Michigan shore. In 1906, the City Council vacated Illinois Avenue east of Stonegate Road and Stonegate Lane, reserving that northerly 10 foot of Illinois Avenue as a public pedestrian right-of-way. Although that 10-foot strip provides legal access to the beach and Lake Michigan, the 10-foot strip has not been maintained and through the entire length of that right-of-way. The ordinance was approved in conjunction with an agreement between the city and then the then owner of the James H. Douglas subdivision. The James H. Douglas owner was to maintain a 5-foot strip and to have it clear of debris so that residents could utilize the path. Unfortunately, it appears that 1906 agreement was never recorded, and so the obligations imposed by the agreement may not be enforceable. As currently situated, anyone throughout the city of Lake Forest has access to that right-of-way. However, if the council so chooses to vacate that right-of-way, in essence, the general public will not have access. However, the homeowners that this vacated parcel would be vacated to would have the access to. Previously, I indicated that in 2006, there were other ordinances for vacated parcels. During that time, staff really identified ways to ensure that limitations were handed to those rights-of-way. For example, in order to be consistent, staff has placed in the ordinance that is before you that the right-of-way does need to remain as an open space, that it can't be used to support subdivision or any bulk. In addition, the ordinance also states that the city would like to place a covenant with respect to utility easement, should that ever be necessary. Based upon all of the due diligence and the direction of the Property and Public Land Committee, it is recommended for the council to vacate the 10-foot easement to 11 Stonegate, 33, 15, and 41 Stonegate, with the exception, And you will see on the overhead this parcel number 3. Essentially, that parcel number 3 would be vacated to 1 Stonegate Road in consideration of all of the bluff restoration work that they are undertaking. It's important to note that if the council decides not to take action this evening, that eventually, within maybe the next few years, the city will be liable for potential bluff restoration that must occur. So unless there's any questions, staff would recommend, if appropriate, and should the city council desire, approve an ordinance vacating the right-of-way located between the property's addresses 14115 Stonegate Road and the properties addressed as 11 and 33 Stonegate Lane. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have a quick question. Could one of the property owners, in theory, put up a fence on their portion, prohibiting others from entering that?
Well, according to, did you want to take that?
Address that?
Yeah, I can address that. The way that the ordinance is currently structured, there is no fence, building, or structure of any kind shall be constructed on any portion of the vacated lands. That's something that the council could amend the ordinance to say, unless otherwise approved by the city council, if at some point in the future the council wishes for something to be constructed on that vacated strip. But as the ordinance is structured, nothing would be able to prevent the access that exists on that strip.
What about the fence that's there already? It's that really old chain link fence. Would that, I'm just curious, would it stay there, or would it be removed, or?
Is the fence currently blocking the access?
Yeah.
The gate is.
Yeah, I think that went up by, I think, the city or somebody long ago, and I think what we would probably do if the council was to favorably act on the proposed vacation, we would probably sit down again with the neighbors so that we could go through exactly what this means, both terms of long-term maintenance and so forth. If the neighbors were interested in seeing that fence come down, I think the city would certainly work with them to do that. But I think also we want to make sure that we don't do anything that disrupts sort of what the neighbors have been accustomed to all these years as well. They may very well want it to just stay in place.
Yeah, and just so I could clarify, and have had discussion with some of the neighbors in the area, the public interest in this property is being vacated. So the city of Lake Forest interest is basically evaporating at this point. But the members of the original plat or subdivision in the area, whatever easement rights they have, still exist. It's just not open to the general public. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and well, that would be the question I'd have.
Which is another reason why no one could block that either. Notwithstanding the language Marla's talking about that would go in our vacation, they do have rights of access through the original easement that was created.
And
private right.
where reasonably the bluff is virtually impassable right now, I mean, technically, if a neighbor wanted to go on that bluff as an overlook, and they have the right of entry, they could go there, look over the bluff, and enjoy it if they wished.
All of the original beneficiaries of the original plat of Lake Forest would still have that access right. And we even included that specifically in the proposed ordinance, that the original beneficiaries would not lose any of those access rights upon the vacation.
Who becomes responsible for the maintenance of it then?
The maintenance of the strip would be the responsibility of the owners, the new owners who received the vacated property.
Are they each responsible for their own portion, or?
For their own portion. Well, those will become a separate PIN number that will then be added to their total parcel, so.
I just want to make sure I understand this whole sequence, because I'm hearing lots of discussions and a lot of technical terms and vague references to this and that, and I'm trying to figure out what the, what happened and why we're doing this. I mean, from all the conversation, and it may make perfect sense and it might be the right thing to do, but from this conversation, I don't know what's going on. So let me try to paraphrase and make sure that I at least either do or don't understand. So once upon a time, there was a subdivision here, and as part of this, this is sort of a plan commission thing we used to do and probably still do. Part of the subdivision, this access to the lakefront was granted to the general public. Am I right?
It's not really a subdivision. The original plat of Lake Forest. So
Okay,
all of
all
Lake
right.
Forest, as it was originally established, received that right in the platting because Illinois Road extended all the way to the lake in the original plat.
Okay,
And
but
so
that
that's
part of
where
the road was
public
never
right-
built.
That part of the road was never built.
So it's like Western Avenue along the train tracks in Whispering Oaks, where the road was supposed to be there, but it was never built.
That is correct.
Okay.
It's typical of a lot of road ends that go straight into Lake Michigan that were never built.
Right.
That have been vacated all around Lake Michigan.
So, so the public access right came because the intent was to build a road to the lakefront there?
No,
Or was it
actually-
there for pleasure purposes?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. The original plat that had the road there would have given public access. However, almost more than 100 years ago, they did vacate that right-of-way, but kept this strip of 10 feet. And actually, you go back and look at the record, I think it was the mayor at that time said, this is a mistake. We should get rid of the whole thing. But at that time, they said, no, we'll keep it. At that time, when they vacated it, they also had talked about the properties on the south side were supposed to maintain it. Unfortunately, this was never recorded, and therefore it was never, the properties to the south were never encumbered with the responsibilities to maintain it. So then over the course of the next 100 years, it basically grew fallow, if you
And
will.
the city didn't maintain it
And the
because we
city
didn't
never
think we were
maintained it.
supposed to have to.
That's right.
So basically, you just have a strip of woods.
We have a
Is that
strip
fair?
of woods, however, most recently, and Karina has pictures she can show you, is that there's been significant erosion in part of this area, including the area that is currently the responsibility of the city of Lake Forest. And in the course of conversation with the homeowners, we said, this makes absolutely no sense for the city to hold on to these rights because we have no intention of allowing everybody in the state of Illinois or in the country, in theory, to have access to the lake through this 10-foot strip. That's not our intent, and certainly that's not the wishes, I think, of the neighbors that are down there. So he said there's really no public benefit for the city holding on to this, and we should relieve ourselves of this liability by vacating it. Not unlike what we did, as you mentioned, with Western Avenue, when we did all those properties along Western Avenue.
But the liability is that the bluff is falling into the water and the city's gonna have to restore the bluff, because that we own that strip of property, is that?
That's one of the
Is that-
liabilities, as long as if anybody goes along that 10-foot strip and is injured, it would be on our property as well.
Right, so, and meanwhile, one or more of the neighbors on either side are in the process of restoring their bluff. And so there'd be this hole or this gap of eroded bluff in between these two restored pieces of bluff, 10 feet wide, because the city owns that and isn't prepared to go in and do the restoration? Is
Well,
this-
I think Kathy could probably better explain it. Practically, the homeowner can't even do their bluff unless the city did theirs as well. And that's where some of the conversation started about whether we give them a license to let them access our property to restore their bluff and so on and so forth. And it got very convoluted and complicated.
So we have a 100-year-old access right that's not being used by anybody, that's a liability to the city, that's about to lead to a significant bill for restoring the bluff, which the next door neighbor is prepared to do. All we have to do is let them. And just, is that, I mean.
I think that summarizes it
So you're
pretty
saying
well.
you're against it?
No, no. I'm just trying to understand the argument in favor, because I think it was all, the way it was presented was a bit convoluted in my mind. And I haven't been that close to it, so I don't know what the background is, but I mean, it makes perfect sense.
And I'd be
given that-
happy for anybody from the PPL committee. They've been looking at this thing for 6 months. So.
If I can just add, this goes back over 100 years, and there might have been a practical purpose to it at that point in time. It serves no public interest today to retain it. We've got a magnificent beachfront that was created by our predecessors 25 years or so ago, and I can't envision anybody in the immediate proximity of that right-of-way wanting to walk down that bluff to access the beach as opposed to driving over to where we have a wonderful beach today. The potential liability so far outweighs any kind of benefit you can envision. That, I mean, I just can't see any reason why we would hesitate to vacate it I's weren't dotted, T's weren't crossed. The mayor 100 years ago was very visionary when he said, why don't we just get rid of it right now? And it's time we stop procrastinating.
If I could clarify, I know it's a sticking point, and it may be of interest to at least some of the property owners that are adjacent. As far as the city of Lake Forest is concerned, we're saying we have no interest in it. The people who have an interest in the original plat, they could go on the property, but they're not going over the city of Lake Forest property. They're going over their own property interest at this point. They have the right of way, so it's their own choice. It's not our allowing them to enter on that property. And I think it's important for the neighbors to know that they retain that right, but we're not involved in that right at this point. Point made.
We won't be.
Right.
Any more discussion?
The one thing, if I could ask, is there are some neighbors here. They did ask that they be allowed opportunity for comment or just ask general questions. We may have answered most of their questions at this point or clarified. I just don't want to go back on what I said I would ask for.
Anyone who'd like to come up and ask a question or make a comment?
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Layden, and I am, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the May meeting with the rest of my neighbors because I was out of town because of an ill father. But from what I am gathering from this, and I did speak to Victor Filippini this past Monday, that my concern is that I still have the ability to, and I'm on Lot 4, the one closest to the entrance of where the Illinois basically ends. I had the ability to walk down the path and actually go down steps to the lake. Unfortunately, that stopped for us when the owners of One Stonegate had some problems with not pulling permits, sewer lines eroded the bluff, and I do have a photograph that I was able to obtain, actually, where you see an aerial shot where you actually see the water running down, and one of the areas that you do see the sewer water running down, it was where I once used to be able to walk down these steps. They were wooden. They're not as beautiful as the ones at the Lake Forest beach, but it was a means to get down to the water, and that's been taken away. And I did speak, like I mentioned, to Victor, and I had asked him, Victor Filippini, if, you know, if something has been damaged or has been taken away, who's basically responsible to put them back? If there was proposed damage, they would be responsible to bring them back. I do also, I did forward on to Corinne a couple of different people. One is a land surveyor that had gone down those steps because there was discussion with Kathy Cerniak and some of the other people from the city that did those steps exist or how did you get down? And I also do have somebody here that represents Griffith, Grant, and Lackey, and actually my fiance who had the house before me, she represented the owner, the Racks, and she can talk to, you know, the councilman about how, you know, she took potential clients down those steps, and they're gone now. I want to make sure that I have the same rights as I once had before. Nothing can be barricaded. You know, I know there currently is a chain link fence from One Stonegate property line blocking going down the path, and I understand from because it's dangerous, and also another gate going through the entrance closest on my lot. So, you know, those are my concerns. I want to see if the city does determine to vacate it, that I have, or anyone that the house is transferred to, has the ability to perhaps put steps to get down to the water where there once was, so. And I didn't know if you would like to hear from Elizabeth Winnicky. She could speak. She's from Griffith, Grattan, Lackey. I don't know if this is an appropriate time for that.
Yeah, and I think that could be better answered by city attorney, but
The way the ordinance is currently structured would not allow for any construction in the vacated property. If the council desires, we could add a clause to that saying, unless further approved by the city council. That way, if there were a coalition of neighbors or interested parties that did want to repair those steps in some way, they could bring that proposal back to the city council and then get approval at that point. As for the deterioration of the original steps, as Karina mentioned, because that maintenance agreement was not recorded against those properties, unfortunately, there's not a way to go back and require any maintenance that would have been required under that original grant in the early 1900s. And so there's not really a way to get those steps rebuilt by the adjacent property owners. But if interested parties in the future wanted to do it, we could certainly add something allowing for that to be presented to the council as it happens.
There would need to be an agreement amongst the homeowners, right? Not just one homeowner.
No, it would have to be a proposal, and I think that's why bringing it back to the city council to evaluate the number of interested parties are in it, what the proposal is, that would give some control over that, and so that any one person would not have control over the ultimate outcome of that.
The only thing I would add to that is I think if there's interest on the part of the city council, we would want to make that mandatory, because city staff would really want to take a look at any petition or any request for that. I don't know when those original wood steps were in there, because we don't have anything in our record. We did receive the emails today. We don't know when they disappeared or not, but clearly today the rules and regulations governing the construction in the bluffs are much different than they may have been 30, 50, or 100 years ago. And so we would want to make sure that community development and engineering staff had a ability to look at that very closely before we allowed any construction in the bluff.
I have a question. Is this any action we're taking now if there was not to encourage a civil remedy if someone's sewer pipe actually destroyed the steps, and if there was a civil remedy sought to replace those steps or do something like that, is any action we're taking tonight limiting that?
No, that's one of the things that private rights of actions will be maintained, even if the city vacates this property, including access rights in the future. Those private civil
and damages done in the past and everything else.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can tack on to what Marla said, you wanted to just make certain that your rights weren't extinguished.
Right, and I wanted to
your private rights are not extinguished. Your
right.
Public rights will be extinguished, just like all the public interest that anybody in Lake Forest had over that right-of-way before we vacated, assuming we do so. Everybody, the whole community had the right of access.
Right.
And by vacating it, we're extinguishing the public interest. Your private interest will still exist. But also, I think you need to be mindful that had the agreement 100 years ago been duly recorded, not only would you have a private right, you'd have a private obligation. And you and all of the contiguous homeowners or property owners would have had an obligation to pay your rateable share of maintaining that easement and rebuilding stairs. From what I have ascertained in our property and public land committee meetings is that you're probably the only one who wants to undertake the obligations that would be commensurate with a homeowners association for maintaining it. I believe the consensus from everybody else is nobody wants that obligation if it had been duly recorded 100 years ago, because it's just too expensive, and it's really the benefit doesn't come close to the burden.
Well,
so just be careful what you wish for, because I don't think you want to undertake the obligations that come with that kind of an agreement with your neighbors.
Well, I was wondering if I still had the rights to the 16-foot, 60 pedestrian easement that is at the water's edge, and how how will I get down there? From what I was told, and I did speak to Robert Hansen, he is actually the gentleman that did the plat of survey for the Douglas subdivision in 1970, I think it was 1974, and he said it was the intent of Mr. Douglas to allow all of those, all the lots to have access, and obviously the two lots closest to the water already had access down to the water. And I do realize I am right now the only one that actually is wanting to keep that or have the steps be put back where they once were, because I am not on the water, but it was the intent of Mr. Douglas in his subdivision to allow everybody in his subdivision to be able to enjoy the water. And, you know, unfortunately, with the owner of One Stonegate, with the destroying of the bluff, and, you know, I'm basically losing that ability that I once had.
Well, your legal right is not extinguished in that easement.
Right.
From a practical standpoint, how do you access it? And that's a private matter between you and your neighbor.
So will I have to then, from my understanding is, then do I have to get permission to go through all those different, now those 5-foot, or in this case, One Stonegate has a 10-foot footpath, basically, that they have to remain open, it can't be planted, or no structures, is that correct? No fencing or anything like that? Will I be able to still walk down to the bluff's edge at least, without asking all of those homeowners permission to do so? Okay. And if I did decide to take the undertaking of putting the steps, is that something that the city would agree to? Consider it?
They'd consider it, but it
Okay.
have to meet code.
Right.
And if that's something that you're interested in, then you should convey that to the city council, because tonight this is only before them for first reading, and we could modify the ordinance between first and second reading to include that language, that if you and your neighbors got together, you could bring that back to the council at some later date.
Okay. Well, I would like to be able to do that. I know from my, my lot anyway, I would like that, so.
Ms. Lynn, what I'd suggest, to follow up Bob's comment, I would suggest, since, again, tonight's first reading of the ordinance only, go back, communicate with Kathy and city attorney, whether it's just you or any of your additional neighbors, and make that message clear, and then council can decide if we want to amend the ordinance to reflect that option.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anything else? I think we need a motion then to approve first reading of the ordinance.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. As well, additional comments by council. Alderman Moore?
I just have a couple of announcements on Croya. We had our, they invited me to the Croya board meeting, and it was wonderful to see what they've gotten done and things like that. It's such a nice organization over there. But I would like to point out, as just a notification, that Croya is having their Croya fundraiser and family event on Sunday, February 10th, from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock at Croya. So I'd just like to get that out there, and some of the kids are speaking, and it should be a good event. Learn a little bit more about Croya.
Great. All right. Thank you. Next item. Sorry.
I'd just like to throw in one comment too, and it goes back to the BMW that we discussed earlier. I think it's fantastic. I think it's exciting for the community. I think it's going to extend a tradition that maybe a lot of people in town aren't aware of, but Knollwood had, I'm gonna botch the last name, Francis We Met, played there in 1915, Bobby Jones in 1929. These are golf's greatest. Gene Sarazen played there, Ben Hogan in the late 1950s. And now we're gonna have the likes of McElroy and Woods and Mickelson, and let's hope it's a tradition that carries on for decades.
Great. Thank you. Next item on the agenda this evening, opportunity for the citizens to address the council on non-agenda items. Anyone care to address the council? Yes, sir. Please come up, state your name and address, please.
I'm Jim Barkmeyer. I'm mayor of Bannockburn, and recognizing Marla. You too, Bob. Back in August, we had the first annual Battle of Bannockburn Barbecue Challenge, and you may or may not know, but Lake Forest won.
And we were the benefit of recently some food because of that, which was spectacular.
Yeah,
Well, it's not an all bad thing.
Dinner the other, whatever, a month or two
And I
ago.
might say that the Lake Forest crowd had a certain Lake Forest panache. They were the only ones that thought far enough in advance to bring their own Bloody Mary mix for about 8 minutes. Which, in any event, you've got this year's trophy. Next year, we're going to do it again, I think, August 17th, so I hope you guys participate again, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Too bad Kevin Issel's not here to accept. That's all right. Thank you.
In light of the BMW thing, I'm really glad we got a half-day road done last year.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for bringing the trophy. We'll look forward to holding on to it.
I was going to do it in December, but it seemed the weather was way too nice, so I thought I'd
Thank you.
Good barbecuing weather.
All right, next item on the agenda is items for omnibus vote consideration. There are 7 of them, and I'm going to read them. If anyone would like to pull any of them off and take them separately, we can do that, but I'll read them and then we'll go for a vote on all of them if so desired. Number 1, check register for period dated November 22nd to December 21st, 2012. Number 2, request for the City Council to waive the bidding process to purchase replacement water plant membrane filters. Number 3, consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission, first reading and final approval. Number 4, consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Zoning Board of Appeals, first reading and final approval. Number 5, consideration of an ordinance approving a recommendation from the Building Review Board, first reading and, if desired by the council, final approval. Number 6, award of 2 grants for the lighting upgrades to the Recreation Fitness Center and the Telegraph Train Depot interior lights included in the FY 2013 operating budget. Excuse me. And number 7, approval of the December 3rd, 2012 regular City Council minutes. Anyone wishing to pull any of those off the omnibus agenda?
Yeah, just one comment on the 5th one. It's just a clerical part. On the actual ordinance, the street address on the header for the ordinance, it's wrong. So if we could just correct it to the proper
It's
street
noted.
address.
Thank you.
Okay. Otherwise.
Any
I'm
other
happy.
additions or corrections to that? Otherwise, we need a roll call vote, please.
We have a motion first, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Move to approve.
Second.
Now we need a roll call vote.
Alderman Novit?
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck? Aye. Alderman Pandeleon?
Aye.
Alderman Moore?
Aye.
Alderman Tack? Aye. Alderman Edelman?
Aye.
Acting Mayor Schoenhyder?
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie. Next item on the agenda, ordinances. Consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 39 of the City Code relating to the expansion of the composition of the Emergency Telephone System Board. And Chief Held, is that you? That's me. Okay, come on up.
Good evening, Acting Mayor and members of City Council. This is just we just kind of wanted to redo the 911 board from what it was. And as it shows in your packet, the only change is that the new board will consist of the mayor and all sitting aldermen. The police chief will remain on, deputy police chief, and then the fire chief. Those are the only really changes to the ordinance. So it used to be a appointee by the city manager of a member of the community. And this is kind of something that's going on in communities, are making the city councils basically in charge of the 911 boards at this point in time. That's the only real change to the ordinance.
Any questions for the chief? I think recommended action is to waive first reading and final on this one. So we need a motion.
And move to approve this ordinance as provided.
Second.
Roll call vote, Bertie?
Alderman Novak.
Aye.
Alderman Waldeck. Alderman Pandellian.
Aye.
Alderman Moore.
Aye.
Alderman Tack.
Aye.
Alderman Edelman.
Aye.
Acting Mayor Schoenhyder.
Aye.
7 yeas, no nays, motion carries.
Thank you, Bertie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any additional new business to come before the council? Bob? Nothing? Okay. Any additional items for discussion at all? Alderman Edelman?
Is it January 30th that the Golf Advisory Committee is having that public meeting? Anybody interested?
It
Is
is.
January 30th the date?
I want to say it's Thursday, the 30th, same night as your meeting, right? Yeah.
And where are we doing that?
I believe it's at the community room at Gorton.
Okay. Because we won't be meeting again until after that. There's a public meeting for anybody watching who's interested to hear about plans for the golf course this season and how we progressed last year, question and answers.
Great. Thank you. If no other business to come before the council, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yeah.
That Stonegate thing is going to be.